Hello everyone. Lately I've been experimenting with SketchUp, the free 3D modeling tool that lets you create models incredibly fast and easy. I wanted to see how well it goes with Inkscape, so I decided to tackle this project of a cartoony isometric room scene. The base was built in SketchUp, and the final drawing was made in Inkscape. In this video I'll walk you through my process, share what I learned, and show you how to create your own isometric scenes in minutes. By the way, I recorded the entire project and turned it into a step-by-step tutorial, similar to the other tutorials I have in my channel, but longer. If you want to support the channel, you can grab it for just $2. It's a great way to learn a new tool with a fun project and help the channel. Link in the description. Alright, let's get started. First up, we are building the 3D model in SketchUp. What's great about SketchUp is that it's designed for non-artists. From the ground up, it's built to be easy to pick up. You can create surprisingly complex models with just a couple of tools. In fact, in my last video, I taught the basics of SketchUp in just 15 minutes. Make sure to check it out, link in the description. And just starting out, I already have a tip I wanted to share. When modeling a room, always start with the base. That means creating the floor, door frames and window frames first. Then once you got that down, you can map out where the furniture will go. This helps you plan the spacing and proportions before diving into the actual models. For this project I wanted a cartoony vibe, so I made the furniture a bit closer together to give it that chunky, exaggerated look. Here's the thing, since we are tracing over models in Inkscape later, we don't need hyper-detailed 3D renders. Instead, we can keep things rough and focus on the bare minimum. Most of the models here were made with two tools, the rectangle tool and the push-pull tool. That's really all you need to get started. Sure, I might use the offset tool or the circle tool here and there, but for our purposes, you don't need to be an SketchUp expert. If you're just making rough models for traceovers, this is more than enough. Another feature I rely on heavily is grouping. SketchUp automatically merges geometry, so grouping is a necessity to keep objects separate. It's also very useful to reuse parts of a model. For example, in this nightstand, I grouped the drawers so they stay independent and can be duplicated. Then I grouped the entire nightstand to keep it as one cohesive object. And honestly, that's about as complex as it gets. Here's another tip. You'll notice I use the hide feature a lot. This lets me fully hide the room and the finished models, making them invisible and non-interactive so I can work on new models in the same document without distractions. For example, I'll hide the main room while I'm working on an asset, and once the asset is finished, I'll move it into place and hide it again. SketchUp even makes hidden objects easy to spot by shading them differently, which is really useful. Before finishing with the model and moving on, I wanted to at least mention one feature that can be really helpful in some cases. SketchUp has a massive library of pre-made models, doors, windows, furniture, even entire rooms. Just go to the 3D Warehouse tab, and this will open a window where you search for what you want and then you download it. But there is a catch. Some assets have restrictive licenses. If you're planning on using your final work commercially, be careful. Always tweak the traced version to make it your own. For this project, I only use a couple of assets to demonstrate how to use the 3D Warehouse, 2 lamps and a chair. Everything else was custom made. But it's a tool that's worth to consider, especially if your goal is to do traceovers. And with that, we are ready to export the image to Inkscape. And here is another useful feature. If you go to the Scenes tab and enable parallel projection, under the camera settings, this gives you the classic isometric look, where the lines do not converge. Then in the Standard Views tab, by clicking on ISO, You can set the camera to a 90 degrees isometric angle. This is what I use to take my screenshots. You can still move the camera around, but this button snaps it back to the perfect isometric view. And we are done. Overall, SketchUp is awesome. It's fast, intuitive, and perfect for preparing isometric designs. You don't need to master every feature, just enough to get the job done, and it's really a tool worth keeping in mind. Now that we got our SketchUp base, it's time to bring it into Inkscape for the real magic. The hard part, the composition and perspective, it's already done. All that's left now is tracing and finishing. If you've seen my other tutorials, you know I usually separate tracing into two methods, line-based and shape-based. For this project, it makes sense to go with the shapes method exclusively. That means I traced on a layer below the reference, using white fills to handle overlaps cleanly. And here are some tracing tips. The SketchUp output was so clean that tracing was incredibly easy. Just use the pen tool to match every line in the reference, of course making closed objects. And unlike my previous isometric tutorials, I skipped the grid here, and I recommend you to do the same. While grids can add precision, they also slow things down. Since we already have the perfect perspective and drawing from SketchUp, the grid here is unnecessary. Some elements like the curtains and pillows were not in the SketchUp model. I purposefully left those for the Inkscape stage because they are more organic and harder to model in 3D. I also added extra details like wooden floors and walls to give the room more character. To fill the empty spaces, I threw in some simple rocks, very easy to draw, but they make the scene feel much more complete. Now for the fun part, color and shading. And I like to start with the base colors, no shading yet. These are often called flats. Once the flats were in place, I adjusted the line of color and weight to make everything pop. And you can see how this already looks good on its own. However, the shadows are what is gonna give the illustration life. This was super simple. I used the classic technique of using a darker color with the lowered opacity. Then it's a matter of entering the group of each object and drawing the shadows there. I also use the shadows themselves as a way to change the colors of the planes, not facing the light, rather than using different colors on the flats. I thought this kept it more flexible. It is something I noticed when adding shadows on this project. Don't stress over realism. There were many planes that should be in shadow here, where I tried to put a shadow and it just didn't work. It messed up with the colors or the composition. The same with the location and the projection of the shadows. Here's a big example. The wall shadow implies there is no roof. I found that funny for some reason. But I tried this and it looked cool, so I left it there. We can call it artistic liberty or the rule of cool, but this project taught me a lot about not sticking to realism when finishing an illustration. Some final touches. I added some tiny details to the bed and chair to polish things off. It's always easier to add details once the big elements are in place. Finally, some simple drop shadows and contact shadows, and that's about it. Really easy. And that's it. We are done with the illustration. This project taught me a ton about combining SketchUp and Inkscape for isometric designs. While I still think isometric grids in Inkscape have their place, SketchUp speeds up and agilizes the process dramatically, and I think it's a tool any artist should have available. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to check out the full step-by-step tutorial, link below. Also, a like and comment are always appreciated, and subscribe for more content on Inkscape and illustration in general. See you on the next one. Bye.